Okay, hi, my name's Chris Dangerfield and welcome to my channel. This is too exciting. One of my most popular, and there's been so many popular videos, but one of my most popular series was the Crack Diaries, which I think had about, last time I looked, it had about 25 million hits. So it's been very, very popular. But what I've managed to do is drag the young lady who I was with during that period and all those hideous, horrific, and essentially hilarious stories, and get her to do an interview. She's here now, live. Gayle, say hello.
Hello, hi.
Go. Amazing. Now, I knew Gayle when she was about 15 years old, and I didn't know her in the biblical sense, so please don't communicate with the police. And after years of hanging around with respective other partners and being a little bit naughty, we finally got together when I was about 24, and I think Gayle was about 9. And
I think I was 22, and you were on the cusp of 25, so you're just before your 25th birthday.
Okay, well there you go. So there was a couple of years between us, and we were together for 11 long and heartbreakingly painful, horrific,
yeah, absolutely,
drug-induced years.
Yeah, yes.
I think I was a lot nicer to you than you were me, though.
But when I look back, I think I took the brunt of it, the situation. I think I had the worst time.
Okay, well there's a question I can ask you.
It's not competition.
It's not a competition, but we were together 11 years. We were both heroin and crack addicts. Yep. 11 years. How many times did you score?
You forget about this.
I mean, just estimate.
Loads, but there were times that I would put on my little coat and everything and trudge down to Chris's house and various other things. I wasn't. Remember?
1 minute.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Can you just give me a number? How many times do you think in 11 years of daily use? Give it a number.
A couple of hundreds.
It was once. You scored. Scored one. You scored one. Anyway. A crazy time, and I think
you did. Yeah, you did do most of the scoring, of course. Yeah, because of the situation.
Who earned the money?
You, but you were the.
So far, I think what the audience will be getting from
you. Tell you what I did. I cleaned your crack pipe out on a regular basis.
You did clean out my crack pipe. It was very kind of you. But I think what people will be understanding already is in 11 years, you sat down and took loads of drugs that I ended up getting in hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of debt for.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that says a lot about...
I think that if regardless of whether I was there or not, you would have still consumed this vast amount of drugs. So me being there was just, it was irrelevant. Whether I...
Amazing. It was irrelevant.
You would have still gone out and got them, so...
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you're grateful for that. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions, really. I mean, we joke about it because essentially we survived. We survived it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done 15, 20 rehab centers. You never went to rehab. You got clean.
No.
Heroin and crack.
I went to a drug rehab center where I was put onto methadone and then Subutex, and then I was gradually weaned off it over a period of years. But
you done that at home, didn't you? You done it at home. You haven't had to go out to Thailand, and you haven't had to go to... No, and to your credit, it's amazing. It's very, very impressive. Few people get clean, but even fewer do it off of their own back. So amazing. Very, very impressive.
Thank you.
I mean, when you're someone like...
I was going to say, and with you too, what you've managed to do and achieve and, eventually get clean. Brilliant.
Dropping it eventually in there. I mean... I mean, 25 years later, you've done it. Like it was nothing.
Oh, but you were clean for a long period before, you know.
I had 3 years.
Different problems in terms of addiction, yours and mine. So I think that's part.
Yeah, you had a whole host of other things to deal with, which I didn't. So no.
Exactly, it wasn't my problem. It was, you know, I was ahead of somebody and loved it. I'm not going to lie. I consumed it, and it allowed me to deal with lots of other problems that I had at the time, which wasn't a good thing, obviously, but in terms of other issues.
Okay, all right. Let me just go in with some questions. I mean, the Crack Diaries, that actual period. Well, I mean, for people, if you haven't seen the Crack Diaries, it's probably worth going to watch that before you watch this video. But a lot of you have, so I'll assume people watching this have seen that. The actual crack period where we basically done about £100,000 worth of crack. I think that was in about 6 months. Was the period when we got busted with the armed police, and that was when the shit really hit the fan.
Yeah.
I mean, we were homeless. We had a dog on a bit of string. I was busking in the street. We were living in.
I remember. Yeah, I think you left that out of, because obviously there's lots of stuff that happened that you weren't able to get into the Crack Diaries. But we went on the run. We had to go on the run because we had a scouse, not just a scouse firm after us, but we had all the, you know, the guys that you owed all that money to. So we had to go on the run. We were going from hotel to hotel, staying in guest houses, all this madness. And
I had skipped police bail, so the police were after us. That was also good. So there's a few questions I want to ask you. Right. So when you had like moments of clarity, what was going through your mind? Like you were a young, before this period, you were a young, successful lady. You were working as a croupier at the Ritz, you know, doing well, beautiful. The world was your oyster. We went to Totnes to get clean because we developed a small heroin habit. And within a few months, we were both going absolutely out of our minds, and life was fucking dark.
Terrible, yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, you've got to remember at the beginning, when we started taking heroin, remember, similarly to you, I had done, you know, I'd experimented with drugs and used them recreationally for a long time. So when it came around to doing heroin, I thought rather naively that it was just another recreational drug, because, you know, you hear all this kind of hype about ecstasy. Oh God, it's gonna, you know, you're gonna get hooked on it. It's gonna lead to other things. So I kind of poo-pooed that and thought that was going to be the same situation with heroin. And at first, when we first started doing it, it was pleasant. You know, we did it once.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. That's amazing. Heroin was pleasant.
But remember, that's what it was like to begin.
Oh, it works. It works.
Remember, it was all, you know, we take, go to sleep among the flowers. We'd go for walks and literally fall asleep among the flowers, and then wake up, oh, it's a beautiful day, all of that kind of thing. Brilliant. But obviously, you're the drunk.
However, I just want to interrupt briefly there, because it's it's an interesting point, because I see this and I hear it, and I think we both experienced it ourselves. You hear so much bullshit about drugs, about ecstasy, about speed, about acid, about weed, and you read all that stuff that's coming from official organizations, drug charities, governments. And then, especially growing up in the towns where we grew up, where everyone's doing, it seems that everyone there was doing like speed and acid and drinking. And it doesn't reflect what you've read. It doesn't. This isn't what I was told that this would happen. And no, this isn't right. And when I think teenagers, they see that they're getting all that false information, they're like, this isn't real. I've been lied to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Transpose that onto your heroin and your crack.
Yes, and that's exactly.
Yeah.
So, and you've got to remember, for a few years we were enjoying it like that. It was the recreational drug. We'd use it at the weekends. You know, fine, get on with the rest of our lives. It was only after, you know, and also that's the other thing. I didn't really understand what addiction was about. So I thought whenever I'd watch documentaries about heroin addiction, I thought addiction was like, you know, I've got to, you know, I need my fix. I didn't really get what the fix was. I didn't realise that it was a physical addiction, that your body metabolizes the drug and uses it, and if you don't have it, you get terribly ill. I didn't get that. I just thought it meant addiction. I've got to have it. I need it.
There's
a psychological addiction. I didn't really understand the full implication of what it was.
There's a sense that it's like when you're giving up smoking, and you think like you think I'm never going to get addicted to heroin because I'll just be strong. Because it's like if you're giving up cigarettes, you're going to want one, but if you don't get one, you're just going to be a bit irritable. I don't think. Someone asked me the other day. They said, you know, no one sets out to become a heroin addict.
No,
I did. I wanted to be a junkie. However, I didn't know what being a heroin addict was.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
The reality.
It's easy to have been a teenager reading your De Quincey and your Baudelaire and your Burroughs and think, oh yeah, I'm going to be a heroin addict. But when you're shuffling along in your bathrobe and slippers with snot falling in your nose,
aching, you know, you sold everything in the house. it's the grimmest life. It really is the grimmest life. So
when did you realize, at what point did you think this is fucked?
I remember we were still in Totnes, and even then we were still using recreation.
Okay, just to clear, I've just got a backstory a little bit. So we were. It's called chipping. It's where you use heroin occasionally, but you give it long enough breaks in between so you don't get a habit. The problem is it's very nice. So it starts off Friday night, and then you leave it till next Friday. But then you start thinking, well, it's Wednesday now. I mean, it was ages ago, Friday. And we were developing habits. We were waking up a bit ill, and it hadn't got to the point where we had to have it. But that's why we moved to Totnes, wasn't it? I said, let's go to Totnes and get clean.
Yeah, part of the reason.
Let's leave all this behind us. Yeah, well, also because we wanted to have our own place and start a life. But I certainly felt that was the motivating factor.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And you've got to remember, we were doing it maybe 2 or 3 nights in a row, so that's enough to get in your system a little bit. So you know.
So you've frozen. Sorry, come on.
Oh, am I frozen?
No, you're back.
Oh, so it's enough. Doing it for 3 nights on the trot is enough for it to get in your system and give you a little withdrawal. So we were doing that quite regularly, weren't we? We're going through little withdrawals. Wasn't very pleasant, but also equally it wasn't wrecking our lives. Went down to Devon, Totnes, let's get clean, and we did for a period when we first moved in there. It was all right.
Hang on a minute. When you say we did for a period, how many days do you reckon that was?
Oh, I don't. Do you know what? Really, when I think back, it was when old.
I think we scored on the 3rd day we were there, mate.
Probably, yeah.
So,
no, I think it was a little bit longer than that, but still, you know, it wasn't long enough, and it didn't take long before we just got like a little kind of crew of people that we, you know, that we were able to see. And
so, at what point did you think this is out of control? I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouth because
it's difficult, isn't it?
Because I suggested to you a while back.
I'll tell you what was happening was that there were so many people coming in and out of our house. It went from being, you know, people used to come. We had a lot of people come around anyway, but it was friends, whatever came around. And I remember just sitting there once and just watching people come in, scoring, going, scoring, going. And I remember thinking, this is going to all blow up in our faces. There's no way we can get away with doing this, with you know, selling all these drugs in this little town. And I remember thinking, you know, we're heroin addicts as well. This is this doesn't feel like fun anymore. I remember distinctly thinking that there was a point when I was sitting in the lounge in Totnes thinking, this is grim now. And I remember as well, there was a party, and we had loads of people around, and I remember a few different people were there, and it was just crack, and we were all on our hands and knees, kind of going up to you. You had the crack pipe, you were sort of giving it out to people, and everyone, I remember just thinking, what sort of parties is this? Nobody's talking, everybody's just, it's real serious, just give me the crack, I need the crack. Kind of lined up on their hands and knees in a queue, waiting for their crack. And I remember thinking, this is dark, this is really grim.
And it is, and you're seeing humans at like their least efficient and least social. Terrible, you know that you could have said to anyone at any of those crack parties, would you like everyone else to leave so you can sit on your own smoking crack? And everyone was going to say
no one gave a fuck about anybody else.
I mean, people who've never done loads of crack won't know this, but people who have, everyone knows it. It's got different names in different places, but we called it the looking. And when the crack runs out, which it rarely did because I was dealing kilos of it, but when it runs out or I've stopped handing it out, people are on their hands and knees for hours picking up bits of biscuit, bits of plaster, bits of cheese, and they'll put them on the pipe, and none of it's even burning. There's no crack left, mate.
People know that deep down. They know. Oh, I did it. I turned the house upside down, just going, it might be a bit there, put it on the pipe, and it was just paint chippings.
Yeah, because when you're smoking rocks, if a bit falls off, you don't leave it on the floor. You pick it up. It's like tenner.
Saying that, you've got to remember, in our house, it was kind of like an Aladdin's cave of drugs. So sometimes you just be like, oh, remember I found loads of crack in the laundry basket. What's that all about? I was just ignoring
the funny thing about all the crack that you kept finding was I hadn't actually lost that. So so when you say you kept finding crack everywhere, that was my business going down the pan. I'd go out.
Remember the rats? They were wicked. They used to just stash. People would come round and they would hold. They were brilliant. They would hold like their bits of rock or whatever. Take them. Remember, you went behind the telly and you were like, oh my God, look, all this crack, Jesus. And
like people might not know this.
And sometimes I'd go in cupboards and there used to be spoons, seeing all these spoons lined up in the cupboard, and you'd gone out, and I thought, wicked, that's wicked. This is weird.
that was me testing different grades of crack, and you thought, rather than let that experiment pan out so I could work out how to make more money and stretch the crack, you thought I'll just smoke all of that.
You never told me, so I didn't know. It's like weird, all these like spoons in the cupboard. Wicked.
It's like a ready-made selection of different grades of crack. Maybe he left it there for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember when the old Bill come round that time, when the door just flew across the room and we were both just fucked? And I remember when they had their sniffer dogs, all the armed police left because they're too expensive. And there was about, 10, 15 coppers still there? And I remember it said on the form that we had dangerous animals, and we didn't have the bull terrier then. They literally meant the rats.
Right. Yeah, that was... And
I remember none of the old Bill would sit down because the rats used to walk about.
They got rats in here, and these were the loveliest, cutest, friendliest little rats. They're like little dogs, rats. So people don't realise this, but they're.
Yeah, they're like little dogs, rats. So can I just remind you though, that bust. So I remember you got me arrested because I'd stashed the smack up and you were too greedy and you went, get the smack out. And just as we got it out, the door went through.
I put the little bit of smack. Remember we had that mad ivy that grew all around the room, literally. And I think you'd hidden it in a little flower. It was a wicked hiding place, actually. It's such a like greedy me.
Such a shame you removed it from that hiding place.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about it was that story. Do you remember after they got their heroin, it was only about half a gram. There was a little blim of hashish as well. But then we were sitting there in the dairy. I was like, this is my business. It's nothing to do with her. They knew you'd had a history of mental issues. And the gathers, they want to avoid that shit because it can get them in trouble. So I already knew that I was going to take the blame. And that's all right. I was all right with that. But then, do you remember, they carried on their search and they kept coming back into the front room with big wads of money?
Gosh, yeah, that was really, because obviously with, you know, it had been stashed around the house, but they didn't come in with it going, what's this? We've just found £5,000 in your shoe. They were like, all right, Gayle, just found another £5,000. Did you know what? There you go, you keep that. And then they go off and come back in with a, that's really weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a pile of about 30 grand in the middle of the floor. Me and you just looking at it. I remember the copper went, can you tell me how two people on income support have got £30,000 cash? And we were like,
my mate Webb, he transferred it. But actually that all kind of coincided with a little bit of something of what did happen. So
no, it was amazing. I had receipts for money he'd sent over for another little bit of business, and I remember saying to the copper, all cocky, I went, it is weird. I know that it appears weird. And I was there like a skeleton, yellow, like weighed about 2 grams, and I went to him, but I'm a writer, and my friends, and my friend sponsors me. And then I've gone over to the desk and gone, here's the Western Union receipts. And he looked at me as if to go, you little shit.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, that's a year's wages for a fucking police constable.
Exactly. And also, they must have been gutted, really, because you think of the amount that, you know, that we were dealing in at the time. And that was normally, the amount that was normally in that house on a Friday night after you'd been up to... you know, to London to pick it up, and it was just by chance that we didn't go up there, and then we got
no. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, didn't we go on the train to?
Every Friday, I'd go uptown and get another ½ kilo of cocaine, wash it up, and bring it back as crack. That Friday, I had a gig because I still had the band. Yeah. So it was the first Friday in months where I didn't pick up enough cocaine to put me and you in prison for 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you also remember I got a text saying the boys in blue are watching you?
Yeah. And they said something about a camera, you know, the camera's been put up in the house opposite. Yeah. And we still didn't kind of think, oh shit, that's we would have kind of
nothing.
Yeah, and you were like, oh, I've got this bar of, yeah, well, sure, I better put this bar of hash, but I'll hide it round. Do you remember that was our main concern? Just to hide this flipping bar.
Don't want to put it too far from the house. I might want a bit of that in a minute.
But that was literally what it was like. Still, but saying that, prior to that bust, there were lots of weird things happening that any normal person that wasn't high on drugs all the time might have, you know, they might have been a bit more astute and thought, hang on a minute, we're being watched. There was loads of things that was going on. Remember, we got asked on the street, those two obvious coppers going, excuse us, have you got any weed? We were like,
no, crack. There was two blatant undercover old Bill outside our house. I walked out and he went, hey mate, do you know where I can get any crack? Half of me was like, oh yeah, no worries. And then I was just all, like that. I was like, something like that round here. Now, when I told the Crack Diaries, what I made clear in it was that they only got about 5-10% of the story, not because I was holding anything back, but because otherwise the story would have gone on forever. But there's a few little things that I'd like you to talk about or tell us about that didn't make it in there that made me laugh. Do you remember the old hippie that? Oh, look at the regret now. Let me tell the people.
It's a lowering of standards. That's what it is, isn't it? That's what people say. It's a lowering of
Yeah.
standards. And it's true. That is, you know, that's what happens. And
but isn't that interesting?
Sorry?
Because when I think of a lowering of standards, I remember pulling water out of a train toilet to inject.
Yeah,
whereas your lowering of standards is going and knocking an old hippie for some free cocaine.
Yeah, but it kind of was, because he was such a lovely guy. This guy, he was not, you know, he wasn't a typical.
Tell the story. Tell the story. So we needed drugs to use and sell. And there was this old hippie. He was nice enough, but he was still a cocaine dealer, and it was pretty shit coke.
Remember, by this time, everything had started spiraling terribly downhill. So, you know, it'd gone from being, oh, we've got loads of money, we're eating lobster every night, to fucking hell, we're up shit creek, we owe loads of money to this person, that person. And you, at that time, wasn't that the start of you owing money to the guy?
I was already, I mean, every time I went back to London to get another kilo, half kilo, I was a few grand short. First time, no problem. Oh, hang on, you're 4 grand short. Yeah, it's all out working. You know, I got people working it. Next time, another 4 grand. Next time, and then, you know, in 5 weeks, suddenly you're 30 grand down, and you're still trying to get this stuff off him. And what people have got to realise with selling crack, if you're using it, you need to be able to sell it faster than you can smoke it.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can't, because it's this, isn't it? 20 quid stone, gone.
And also, you've got to remember, because we had continual access to it, it was literally just a pile about that much in front of me all day and all night.
No, we were smoking about, I mean, cost price to me, about £700 a day. Street valued, we were doing about £2,000 a day of crack between us.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, probably about what, a 16th of heroin, so about another £100 of heroin on top of that.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's madness.
It's just ridiculous, and it's not just the effects of the crack; it's everything that goes with it. So no sleep. Remember, we didn't sleep for about a week, and that was normal. And then we might just have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So we were hallucinating. It was almost.
Well, I want to get onto that in a minute, but can you? So there was this old fella that we'd done a little bit of business with.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a minute, Gayle. And I'd done a bit of business with him. I sold him a couple of ounces, so he kind of trusted me a little bit. And because this had been going on a while now, and any junkie or any addict will know this, you've burnt all your bridges. You've borrowed all the money off of everyone you're going to get any off. So you have to start going further afield. And, you know, dealing was our crime, but we weren't thieves. There's a lot of stuff we didn't do. I mean, things got so desperate. Do you remember we'd go around all the phone boxes, seeing what change people left in them?
Actually, do you know what? I totally forgot about that until you just mentioned it then, yeah.
And I remember once I found £2 in one, and you went, fucking run, because they're going to come back for that. But the mad thing about it is, 2 weeks before we're getting money out of phone boxes, we might have had 50 grand cash on us.
I know, yeah, exactly.
And then 2 weeks later, we might have had that, but it's just up and down. So there's this old hippie bloke, and I said to you, why don't you go round there, flutter your eyelashes, and see if you can get him to give you an ounce of cocaine. So tell me what happened.
The story was that I was to say to him that you'd been arrested. We got busted. You got arrested. You were put on remand, and I was left with no money, no electric, no food or anything. And would it be possible to? I don't know. How much did you tell me? I can't even remember. What was it? I
think we got a quarter or half. But the funny thing is, listening to you say that, then Chris has been busted. I think I had been arrested, but regardless, it's like Chris has been busted. I've got no money and no electricity. Any normal person would say, "Can you lend me 50 quid?"
Yeah, it was this real. I know. It was this ridiculous story about how he's got to, loan you this coke, and that wash it up and then sell it as crack, and then you'd make some money, and then we'd be able to pay him back, and then in the meantime I'll be able to get my electric and my food. It's just
so what happened? So we didn't call him, did we? You just went round his house.
You were hiding around the corner.
I was steady on hiding. I think I'm a bit cooler than that, but yeah, I was kneeling down behind a citron. Yeah, it was.
Behind a post box.
So I had a newspaper with the eyes cut out. So you've knocked on his door. Tell us what happened. I mean, this isn't an amazing, eventful story, but I quite like the subtlety of it.
It's just a kind of hideous, the things that you do.
I mean, you were a 22-year-old beautiful young woman going into a house full of old hippies. I mean,
there was quite it was full of. I remember actually, I was quite surprised because when I knocked on the door
from the top, Gayle. So you've knocked on the door.
Knock, knock, knock. This guy answers. Hi, can I help you? You all right? Oh, is Dave there, please? Yeah, come in, come in. Dave comes down with all his long grey hair and his kind of, sort of paisley shirt. I was like, oh God. He's like, oh, hello, Gayle. I'm here. Thinking, what the fuck are you doing here? I never, you never come round, but it's fine.
No, not only did you never come round, but I don't know you. I've met you once. You were sitting in that room. You were sitting in that room when Chris sold me that ounce of stamped on wet cocaine.
Oh God! Oh no! And then he was like, and then I was like, obviously I've got her axe as well. I can't just tell a story; it's got to be convincing. I was like, no, I'm not all right. Oh my God, Dave, you never guess what's happened. He's like, what? He's like, come up, look, just come down, sit down. And he was sitting on the bed. I was kind of sitting on some beanbag, and these other hippies were sitting around. I was like, oh my God, Chris. I said, he's bloody hell. We've got busted. He's like, what? I was like, I know. They fucking come round. SO19 machine guns, and they've carted him off. And I said, they kept him on remand. I said, there's no work, there's no business, I've got no money. I said, I've got no electricity, no food, nothing. He was like, oh, Gayle, God, I can't believe this is happening. I was like, I know. I said, I mean, the only thing that I can think of is if you, you sub me like, however much it was, then. Did I say that I was washing it up to make crack? Or I can't remember the story properly that I gave, or that you might come out and then I'd sell it, and then I'll be able to pay him back the money, make some money myself off the back of it, and then get the electricity. And he's like, well, of course, yeah. I mean, that. And then he gave me a tenner on top of it as well. I remember he gave me a tenner. Hang on.
Whoa. When he said, yeah, of course, because you know what that meant. That meant we've now got crack. We've also got some coke we can make into crack and sell and get some heroin. So everything's sorted. So how did you feel when you realised that the blag had happened?
I felt half really kind of, I'm totally lying to you, and bad.
And half, and not 5%.
Fucking wicked. This was so easy. Like, I was a bit nervous about it. I was thinking, oh, I've really got to put on this out. And actually it was, but then I remember telling you afterwards, he was lying on his like chaise long, and wasn't it just a few pillows?
Dead bed.
Yeah, and he was like, funny old world, isn't it, Gayle? I was like, yeah. It's like there's enough people in this world that rip other people off. And I was like, yeah. You could come around, somebody like you could come around here and they could be like, look, Dave, I'm short, I haven't got any money, and give me some bloody sob story to get some money out of me.
No shit.
No, he said that at the time, but he wasn't actually talking about me. He was just using this kind of.
But kind of was.
Probably unconsciously, deep down, he was, because he knew it, but didn't.
Yeah, because he absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, probably, yeah. So then I was kind of felt obliged to stay there and socialise for a little bit, and it was all weird and awkward because, I'd kind of swindled a load of cocaine off this guy who was in that world. He was was all right, wasn't it? Let's face it.
He was all right. He was all right.
And then I had to, you know, at some point I left, and you were down the road. So I had to go, bye, yeah, I'll get all this sorted out, and then I'll pay you back. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Dave. You're a diamond. Thank you. You know, you've saved us. You've saved us. Walked down, and you were all you were around the corner.
Oh, crouching tiger hidden Dangerfield.
Fagin went, yeah, did you get it then? I went, yeah.
Fagin? Did you say Fagin? Fuck you.
You were a bit, I remember you all like a bit like, yeah, you get it then, yeah.
Did you get the drugs? Did you get the drugs?
And I was like, yes. Yeah.
Man, no, I remember you coming down the road. You've looked around to make sure no one's looking, and you've gone to me. You're like,
yeah, because it is the relief as well, you know. There was no, he didn't question anything. He didn't go, well, you know, you've got to make sure you get this back to me on time, and I need this money by next week. There was none of that. He was just...
No, and we never saw him again.
I know, we never even paid him back.
Oh, well, if you want to, I'm sure I can get his address. So there's another one I like about you, that in the Crack Diaries, we smoked all that Scouser's crack. We were in big trouble. We went round one of those junk houses where all that lot lived. It was a house just full of junkies, hoping to be able to sell a bit to them.
Remember junkies and slugs?
Yeah, it was just fucking gross. Yeah. And I remember, obviously, they had no money. We just done in all this stuff, and those Scousers would have cut our throats. And I remember, do you remember that geezer Chris? Do you remember what he said to us once when he was sleeping on a Z bed, like one of those fold up beds. They all had beds in the front room. No one went to their own rooms. There was like bowls of like dried Weetabix that had been there for decades. Said to you, I was there, but he was talking to you, and he went, it's a funny one, Gayle, but heroin saved my life. And he looked like a skeleton and like just dying in this bed, and I was thinking it didn't.
No,
it really didn't.
Well, his argument was that he was an alcoholic and that the heroin saved him.
Yeah.
Pictures of him when he was a young man. He was like this handsome young man. He looked totally different. Remember? Did you
have a secret crush on him? Is that what you're telling me? He looked like fucking the Mummy or something.
Yeah, he looked bloody terrible, didn't he? But they all.
But I remember when we're now fucked. We've done in all that Scousers gear, which they want the money for. They're living at our house, and I remember he said to us, "You can stay here. You can have my bed."
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember his bed? I mean, that was a low for me. It was damp. It was damp, and it smelt of piss.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you've got to remember the frame of that was one of the worst nights, I think, because remember our frame of minds at the time. We were living, and I remember being so depressed. I went in this terrible depression because we had these Scousers living with us, and nothing, you know, any kind of sense of little control that we had in our lives had totally been taken over by all these horrible situations, people that were after us for money, and these fucking Scousers living in our house. And they weren't just, you know, these were, remember, he was on the run from prison for murder. He just got out of prison, and he was on the run.
They were murderers.
They were, like, do you remember? He was like this massive, he used to inject, what was it? Like,
Steroids.
You know, so, and I remember just thinking, this is hideous. What is going on? We've got these fucking blokes in our house. It's awful. And so
we were both crying in that pissy bed, and we'd even lost the ability to communicate with each other because we've had that conversation so many times. It was like, we've burned all the bridges. We need to find a monkey. We need to find £500 by morning.
Yeah,
no chance of doing that.
The nature of what we'd done. Remember, prior to that, if we were under this ridiculous impression that if sometimes they would drop a bit of crack on the floor, and we go, oh look, drop this. There you go. Thinking that they go, oh, that's really great. Yeah, thanks. have a bit of heroin yet? You know, and they didn't. They were just like, yeah, tar. So madness. And that was, we went, it was almost like we went mad that night and just thought, let's just smoke it. Let's just smoke all that crap. And then when we went down to Heroin Heights, that house, we're offering it to people. I mean, it was just crazy, but we knew it was almost like a psychosis or something. We knew that we were in so much shit that we were just getting ourselves into more shit.
Now, the funny thing about it is, and there is a funny thing here. So in the morning, I mean, I've kept one bag of brown. You always have to, you know that, for the morning, because if we're going to make some money or do something, if without a bit of smack, we're not getting out of that bed. And I didn't tell you about it. That's just under the pillow. So I go down into Paynton Town Centre or something to make a phone call. When I come back, I'm looking at you being led into a fucking police van, cuffed up.
Yeah, I know. Thanks.
Thanks for my fucking fault.
I know, but it was
sorry about that. Sorry about you being a junkie.
Just like took anything out, you know, on top of everything else that was going on. You know, they got busted, didn't they? But the drugs were upstairs.
And the funny thing was, you hadn't been arrested yet. You didn't know how to play that game at all, did you?
Well,
I mean, you had a couple of...
But I kind of did know how to play the game because I knew that really you've got to remember they were after you at that time. So I had to kind of keep it, you know, I hadn't seen you and I didn't know where you were. And well, yeah, but the bit I want to get to is the bit where when they said to you, are you a suicide risk? Yeah, I know why you're like, now you remember. You thought, if I say yes, right, for people who are watching this who don't know this, when they arrest junkies, they will get a doctor to look in your eyes. They will know that you've used because you're a junkie. That's all you do. And they will say, you're not fit for interview. And it's a legal thing because you can retract it later by saying I was fucked. But they will always say you're not fit because what they want to do is keep you in there for a good 12 hours until you're withdrawing to yap because you just want to get out of there. I've been offered heroin in those situations. I've had old Bill say, you can leave with that bag if you give us some information. And when you're fucking like that, that's why they do it. So when they said to Gayle, are you a suicide risk? You thought, this is my way out of being kept in here all night, didn't you? Yeah. So I said.
So what actually happened?
So, you know, so obviously I was arrested for that bit of heroin that was under the mattress, taken to the station, and they were like, right, have you got any history of mental illness, suicide attempts? I thought, wicked. I went, yeah, I have, yeah. Thinking, right, they were going to go, right, on your way. Sorry, we've arrested.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's an hotel for the night.
They were, but the way he said, he went, right, I'm ordering a blue suit, and I don't know he said it. It was all like a judge making a sentence. He went, right, it's going to have to be the blue suit and the flip-flops or something like that. And I was just like, what? And I had to wear that like boiler suit.
So basically, they'll take your belt off you, your laces, just standard behaviour. But because you had a history, they gave you the full blue paper boiler suit and a 24-hour camera surveillance in your cell.
And I remember thinking, I'm so dying for the loo. I need to go to the loo. I just wouldn't go. I wouldn't go because the camera's on me. And even my flip-flops, they were next to my feet. And this policeman, copper, walked past, and he came in. He went, "We'll just take those for you, okay? That's right. There, we're just taking a flip." Because he probably thought she's going to hang herself for the flip-flops or something. I couldn't even have them. Yeah, it was absolutely hideous. And then obviously you come out, you're ill, you're rattling.
Yeah, and you're in all sorts of trouble. Now, another thing. So I went to court in the morning for that bust we just mentioned, for the little lump of smack and the lump of ash, and it was nothing. I got a little fine and some police bail bullshit. And it was that when I come out of there, that was then when we got a phone call saying that the bloke I owed hundreds of thousands to was in Totnes with a firm looking for me. So that was when they said, fuck it, we've got to get out of the house. So we grabbed everything we could. We gave the rats to Trevor.
Yeah.
And which I could get, which I think was about $4 grand.
Yeah.
That was all I could find. And we went to a B&B in Paynton. Yeah. And I remember me and you thinking, oh, we'll make it a bit spicy. We'll get a bit of porn. I mean, amongst all this madness, trying to have a normal, sexy night with your girlfriend. And that we've moved into this B&B. We've got heroin, crack, and there's this money. Now, I don't tell you where that money is. I just stash it up. Not because I'm hiding it, but it wouldn't be the thing. I wouldn't just go, this is where the money's going. I just stashed it.
Yeah. So,
and then we start.
Yeah, sorry.
Go on, you tell it.
No, I was just going to say, what was weird was that we're in this hotel room, and for some reason, I think you're in the toilet in the bathroom, and for some reason, I just think, I'm going to look under the beds. I don't know why. And I saw all this cash. And I was
no, but that was after.
After what?
Well, because this is what happened. First of all, we blatantly thought you were a working girl, and we were after a room for the night. I mean, because you look
around the hotel, And remember, he said, "Oh, can I have the cash up front because we get a lot of bad people and cracking."
Yeah, and I get a roll of $4 grand out of my pocket and just peel off. There you go, mate. You'll be all right. Sorry about the complexion. Then, well, I remember you said to me, "I haven't felt this safe in months."
How sad is that? That I felt it's almost like, God, I feel so safe and cozy. This is like normality in a fucking B&B in bloody Paynton.
And so I said, so should we smoke some rocks? And we've gone in the bathroom, and fair enough to you, you said to me, you went, there's a window here. It was frosted.
Yeah.
But you were like, maybe keep it down. And I was like, it'll be fine.
Yeah. And then it was
what happened?
I was like, it's the owner because we're smoking. Remember, that was what we thought it was. It's like, he's going to come in because we're having a cigarette. And then, did we open the door? I don't know, I can't remember. And then suddenly...
Yeah, I opened the door and I was just going to say, oh, can't we smoke? But then when sorry, my phone's ringing. But then when the police came in, and what had happened was the woman who owned the hotel next door just saw two people smoking crack.
Yeah, and obviously she'd been keeping a lookout because a lot of crackheads and bad people had gone to that place, and we were just, just some more. So they came in, but prior to that, this is what I was saying. Okay. After you hid the money under the bed and didn't tell me, something made me bend down and look under the bed. You were in the toilet at the time, and I remember thinking,
right.
What's all that? There's loads of money under there, thousands of pounds. Chris must have put it under there. And I was going to take it out and put it in the drawer, in the chest of drawers. And for some reason, something said, don't, just leave it under the bed. And then we got the knock at the door. Then all the police came in. And then they're like, right, what's going on? And searched the room. Got, right, we know you're doing drugs. We're going to bring the dogs in. And all of this. The drawer that I was going to put all that money in. And I was like, God, I didn't put the money in.
Yeah.
There was all bits of crack and heroin in there.
Well, I can remember there was a couple of wraps of heroin and a few little wraps of crack in foil. And as she was like moving her hands around, they were banging around like a fucking pinball machine.
Yeah. They were like, don't you lie to us. We're going to find these drugs.
And I was thinking, darling, it's virtually in your hand.
He was just flicking them around. And where these bloody drugs? They're going to flick it. And
I get arrested. Don't I? Because they find a bit. Remember, and I put my hands
all these porn mags, so they're thinking that I am a prostitute. That's what's going on in their minds. Yes, continue. Yeah.
They think that I've got hold of a working girl. We've got some porn. We got some drugs, and now I'm getting arrested. And I put my hands up because they found a little bit, nothing like the amount that was there. carted me off. And so as soon as I'm cuffed again, I've been a court that morning. I'm now handcuffed again. I'm thinking, for fuck's sake, as if it's anyone else's fault. Why is the world conspiring against me? All I want to do is buy, sell, and use crack. So I'm in the back of the motor, and all I'm thinking is, if Gayle doesn't find or know about or get that money out, because the old Bill can take that as proceeds of supply. If you don't get that, we are fucked. We're homeless. We can't pay for our heroin habit. I mean, fuck the crack. But
I know that you think about my welfare. I hope nothing's happened to me.
Well, obviously.
Money. No. But this was a beautiful thing because I had
I mean, that's my first thought when I hear the intro to this story. It was a beautiful thing.
It was a beautiful thing, yeah. Because I checked under the bed without knowing what I was checking for. I'd seen this money. So in my head, actually, I'm thinking I need to get that money and the drugs that you flicked around in the drawer and totally missed. So I was like, can I get dressed after their car?
Hang on. Whoa. How many coppers are in the room at this stage?
About 4. There's a woman.
And it's a tiny little room, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, I've got to get dressed, but I need to get the money. I need to get the money and I need to get the drugs. So I say, can I get dressed? Can I have some privacy to get dressed? But I didn't want them to go, yeah, but we need a WPC to stay here with you. Yeah. So she was like, all right, and she asked and said, is it what she wants to get dressed? And I'm like, yeah, all right. So they left me, literally, not for very long at all, probably, I don't know, less than a minute. And then
I think the reason you got away with that was, again, because they thought you were a working girl. They didn't think that you were any kind of threat or risk or drug dealer.
Yeah, possibly, probably. So in that time, I had to get the money out of the bed, put it down my knickers, get all the drugs.
Hang on. You shoved $4,000 into your knickers.
Had to. I didn't want them to, on the way out, go, hang on a minute, what's that in your bag or anything? Yeah. You know, it was important, so I had to put it, conceal it somewhere where they're unlikely to go. Hang on, let's check your knickers.
Yeah. You must have looked like you had a right old 1970s bird's nest.
Yeah, I probably did. Yes, they did. They'd be like, you know.
Yeah, darling, if you're gonna do this job, have a shave.
And then obviously all the drugs in my mouth, and I was like, I needed to. I went to some box room, dear. But then I remembered, I didn't know where to go because I couldn't go back to our house, obviously, because it had been busted. There was no door on it because the police had knocked the door in. The firm from Dartford had come down. They were we knew they were there. They were waiting for us. We exhausted all our friends. You know, there was nobody that we could kind of rely on. I had no.
We burnt all our bridges.
Yeah. So I remember going into a petrol station and this woman was in there, and I can't remember. It must have been like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, have you got a phone? She's like, oh, we don't have a phone. I was like, it's just that my boyfriend, he's just been arrested and I can't go home because there's all bloody blokes, they're gangsters with machetes and that. And
Hang on. Were you acting?
No, well, I no, because that kind of was the situation.
It was the truth.
Yeah, I was like, they've got all guns, I can't go back there. And I was so drained and exhausted, and we'd been on this mad, you know, it was life was this terrible roller coaster. We had sperms after us.
You said sperm. Hang on, you said sperms. You said we had sperms after us. I mean, in many ways, you've always had sperms after you, Gayle, but, you know. Sperms after us. And I was just exhausted, emotionally exhausted, just so fed up and tired and desperate and in tears. And I was really worried about you as well, you know. And so it wasn't really acting, but I knew I needed something from her. I didn't want her to go, there, right, then on your way. I needed her to help me in some way. So... yeah.
So she said, look, my husband's a taxi driver. And I remember her going, after I said all this, I've gone, you know, my boyfriend, he's been arrested. You know, we've got all these gangsters after us with guns and machetes. And she went, oh, bloody men, don't they make you sick? And I was like, yeah.
Hang on. You've got $4 grand in your knickers. You got a mouthful of crack and heroin. You're like, yeah, bloke, so fuck everything up.
I was like, I know. So she was like, my husband's a cab driver. Remember, I still didn't really know where I was going to go, and I thought it's got to be Trevor, and he picked me up and took me to Trevor's. Imagine up to nothing.
Right, hang on. Backstory: Trevor is this lovely man. He's a bit of a nutter. He's a Totnes local. Used to run a music shop, and then he had a takeaway shop. He was one of the many people in Totnes that stopped going to the pubs and become a crack addict after we arrived. But he was a nice bloke. He was problematic socially, but I mean, there's a classic example. That's the only person you felt you could go to then.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, we were really close. You know,
no, of course not.
But he was the only. There was nowhere else I could go. So I had to knock on his door and say, look, Chris has just been arrested and I can't go home. We've got this firm after us. And he was like, yeah, of course you can come in. But in the same breath, he was like, right, get that bloody smack out and give me some.
Right, so, and now people need to know he wasn't a heroin addict.
No, he wasn't, no.
And when you are, and you ain't got a lot left, and one of you's been nicked and all that, you need what you've got. And I know that you would have done as I would have done you. I've got to save some of this, because when he comes out tomorrow morning, he's going to be fucking sick as a dog. But Trevor, not being an addict, doesn't get this. No, and now you're staying at his house, he thinks he can make demands, and he doesn't understand the scale of that demand.
Exactly, and I can't turn around and say to him, no, not really, Trevor. You know, Chris is going to need it tomorrow. So I've got to give him some, but, you know, I'm looking at it thinking, don't do too much. And he's just going, oh, yeah, that's lovely. Oh, yeah, that's, you know, all of that. And then, so then I had to stay there on his couch, and his wife was really normal and straight, wasn't she? It wasn't like she was part of that whole thing.
She was straight as you like.
But you know, they were lovely, and they you know, they were nice to me. Now,
something I think I have said this to you, and you agreed, but one of the things was because I was dealing drugs since I was like 15 years old, but it was always in Dartford when I had so much support, so many different supplies, so many customers. It was very hard. Even when I got in a lot of debt with some pretty sort of big dealers, there was people like Nick who'd bail me out. He'd give me like 5,000 E's to sell. And so there was always a bit of this. But in Devon, we were pretty much on our own. So it quickly... Sorry, go on.
Especially when we were in Totnes, it was okay because one, we weren't proper heroin addicts then. We hadn't, become fully addicted, and we had lots of people around us, lots of friends. We had lots of still links to Dartford. We weren't as isolated. It was when we moved to Paynton, and then we really got in the shits that suddenly we.
And everyone was done with us.
Yeah, exactly.
I mentioned this to someone the other day. The first time I went to rehab, I was getting letters off of friends that I'd known all my life, like 2, 3, 4-page handwritten letters. Look, man, you're worth more than this. You can do better. You're such an interesting bloke. Everyone loves you. All this sort of stuff. By the last time I went to rehab, I literally got someone saying to me, when you get out, can you give me that 30 quid you owe me? It's like,
and that, you've cut off.
Say live. This hangout is on air. Hi everyone. So we had some technical difficulties. Not quite sure what happened. One of our computers decided to fuck up, and it's taken us about 20 minutes to sort this out. So we've lost the thread of what we were talking about. But rather than end it there, just hideously, we've managed to sort it out. So there's going to be a little bit more. So apologies for the the weird little edit there, but it was either that or just end it there. So you there, Gayle?
Hello.
Okay, so the thing I want to ask you about, one of the things that it seemed to strike a chord with a lot of people who saw the Crack Diaries, and this, of course, is the issue of when the Scouse firm took the dog.
Oh,
I mean, people were crying.
Yeah, well, it was just absolutely devastating and just horrific because, you know, we'd got him. I absolutely loved this dog, and he was, you know, he was totally innocent in all of this. So we basically, the Scousers, even though, had we paid the money back or not?
I'll tell that story very quickly, and then you can tell the dog bit from your side. So when we said to them, rather than us running the odd rock here, give us a load of them and we can sell it all and we'll make loads more money. So those idiots gave a couple of junkies a handful of crack, which we'd done, and that was when we ended up staying in that pissy bed. And in the morning, you got arrested. And that was what all that was about. I ended up selling someone a load of the shittest hash in the world. It just came out of the blue, this bit of business where I managed to be able to pay them back. However, they weren't happy because all those junkies had grassed on us.
Yeah.
They made me meet them out of the house. They walked me up into under this underpass. I thought I was going to get killed. They've walked us back to the house. He's literally told me he's killed people for 20 quid before. Not being paid, but because they owed it to him. And then just when I'm thinking he's going to kill me, Gayle's in the other room, and I'm literally thinking I'm probably, if not going to get killed, I'm going to get my face slashed. And then he says to me, "We want your fucking dog." And that, I'll tell the audience now, as you'll see in the Crack Diaries, that dog was the only good thing in Gayle's life. I wasn't. We were just a junkie pair by this point. I mean, we've always had a lot of... Yeah, but that was a little bit of goodness. You could get out the house, you could walk the dog.
Gorgeous, I loved him to bits.
And so I've had to walk into the room that you're in. You're thinking I'm going to be dead, and I say to you,
so when you come back in, initially I'm relieved. I think, oh, all right. And then you go, yeah. And you, the way you said, because you were obviously nervous about telling me, and you said they want the dog. I remember your voice broke as you said it because it was obviously devastating. I was like, what? It's like they want the dog. And I just couldn't believe it. I can't tell you how painful and how, you know, I didn't know these people. I didn't know what they were going to do to him. I didn't know where they were going to take him. You know, he was my baby. I loved him. And they just came in. It's like, we want the dog. It's a recompense for what you've done.
Even though we paid them the money. And what done me was they didn't say, we're taking your dog for a few days. We're taking your dog for a few weeks. As far as I was concerned, we'd never see him again. And I knew I was so powerless because even if I'd have said to them, no, fuck you, you ain't having the dog, they would have done me up, maybe done you up, and still taken the dog.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And
I started crying. Yeah, no, I just totally was, you know, broke down in tears.
Oh, you were wailing. You were just like it was as if the last bit of goodness had been taken out of your life.
It was, you know, it was at the time. And I remember I said, can't we just? And then you went shh, because you thought I was going to say something that was going to incriminate us, or I don't know. And he was like, no, what's she going to say? What are you going to? I was like, can't we just pay you back in bits or something like that? And he was like, no, we're taking the dog. And we just had to put the lead on him, and I watched him take him out. And then I didn't know where he was, so it was like, you know, every night I would wake up in the night in this terrible kind of panic.
I remember.
I didn't know what had happened to him, where he was. If I went out in the street, I kept thinking I could see him. We kept hearing stories. He's staying with some couple, some junkie couple, then some other junkie couple. It was just horrific.
I know, and we knew what that dog was like because away from you or me, he didn't want it. He just was sat down, gutted.
Baby, yeah, exactly. Like a toddler. He was so, you know, he loved us. And
also, he was a bull terrier, and he was a big bull terrier, and he was 100% a fighting dog. And I thought they're taking him home. They're either going to fight him or breed him to fight his pups.
They weren't, you know, they talked about dogs. Oh, we've got dogs at home, you know. And I remember that little Scouser going, my dog, I punched him. This is how hard they are. I punched him right in the nose. He went as hard as I could, and he just looked at me. That's how hard they are. So that, you know, that's their mentality with dogs. They're not dog lovers. They're not animal lovers. They're just.
And also, they got the money that we owed them, and the reason they took the dog was because they were cunts.
Yeah,
they wanted to hurt us.
Absolutely, yeah. So. That was, I don't even know how long they had him for. It was weeks, wasn't it? Was it?
I think they had him for about 5 or 6 days, but one of those kids was all right. His name was Carl, I think. Yeah, and I remember when they were walking me back to the house, when I'm thinking I'm getting my throat cut here, I said to him, I said, am I in trouble? How big? Because I sort of dropped back from the pack a bit. And he said to me, he said, just fucking keep it shut. He said, say as little as possible.
But it was weird because that Scouse weightlifter did have some weird respect that he had for you, because he thought that, you know, if you weren't in this world, if he wasn't the way he was and you weren't a junkie, you were quite similar. That's what he hoped. That's what he
what it was, I mean, people like that, they have an inferiority complex around their intelligence. You know, a lot of gangsters are very clever, but a lot of them are fucking stupid. That's a fact. There's this mythology that they're these intellectual geniuses. They weren't. They were thugs. They were just, absolutely. They were bullies and they were thugs. And I had a lot of books, didn't I? I had hundreds and hundreds of books because I'd done 2 degrees. And he talked to me a bit about them, and it wasn't even, we weren't discussing literature. He literally said to me one night, he went,
"You've got Freud," and you went, "Yeah, I used to lecture. You know, I was a lecturer. I studied Freud and post-structuralism, and I lectured a bit of Freud." He went, "Yeah, I've done a bit of Freud in my."
Yeah, no, what he said to me was, he went, "I read books and shit," and I was like, "Right, yeah, you come across as that kind of bloke," but weirdly. Every time I see a junkie in town, that everyone knew they had a dog, and everyone was like, "That's just low." And I remember seeing him in a park, my own fucking dog with these cunts, and he's run up to me, and they've just pulled him back. No, you're not talking to him. But then out of the blue, that Carl turned up, didn't he, with the dog, and he went, "You were fucking lucky. They were going to take him."
I rang him up because I didn't know. I didn't know he was only young. He did a paper put him, and I didn't want them to be, you know, crapped on the carpet because they don't know he's learning about going. You know, he needs to paper down for him. So I remember talking to them about that on the phone, and I cried, and then I rang them up again.
You've frozen.
Have I?
Bloody you. It's all right, you're back now, no problem. So the dog came back, and now this is something I've also said to you. One, and this relates to what I was saying about when we were getting up to no good in Dartford. I had a lot of friends, I had a lot of business opportunities, drugs, but so, you know, I was always robbing Peter to pay Paul, but you juggle it, that's what everyone does. So however much trouble I got in, I could get some work from someone else, blah, blah, and I was looked after, the likes of Nick and all that looked after me. Yeah. But down there, like I said, like we talked about earlier, we were just out on our own. And I mentioned this to you, I think, I don't know, about a year ago, that I always had a feeling, and I kind of thought that you did too, that once we'd had enough, we could always go back to Dartford. This was temporary. However shit it got, I mean, going back to Dartford was going to mean admitting to your mother and my mother that we were junkies. That you had a police record
of grief and you know, and trouble, and
it was a lot to admit, but it was always an option. And do you remember that time the landlady come round with a fucking we hadn't sorted out paying her, there's not meant to be a dog in the house, she's gone mental, and I remember it just clicked in my head, and I looked at her and I went, "We're going home."
Exactly. And also that, remember that house, there was something that I remembered the other day. This is the typical junkie thing, that we'd lost our keys for that flat. So we had to keep borrowing someone's ladder every time we wanted to get in and climb up and kind of get in the window.
We lost our keys. We'd lost our keys for about 3 months. We did not have, and so the door was just open. And you had to get through the fucking window. But I remember saying, we're going home. And I rung up Nick and I said, Nick, it's gone shit tits up. I'm in so much trouble. And he'd arranged Steve, you know what I mean, and a motor. And in 3 hours he was there. And we chucked everything we could in the back of that car and got the fuck out of there, man.
Yeah. And that was because, you know, there was lots of you know, we were going to have to deal and handle with lots of difficulties going back home, and that's what kept putting us off, obviously. But after that woman came round, you know, we got into all that trouble for not paying the rent. That was it. I remember you just saying, "Fuck this, we're going home." Yeah,
we had it, Nat. But at that point, we had the Dartford firm that I was now into for nearly 100 grand. We had the Scousers, because you got arrested. They then had to leave our house, so we fucked up their plan. We had the landlady and landlord after us. It was, and I think it had come at us.
That was, you know, that landlady, and actually that wasn't our fault, because I remember it was the. No, I know you think that I didn't fill out these forms, but you actually did. No, I remember, I really did, and somehow it got lost or fucked up, and we went down there. And we said, look, the landlady, she's going to chuck us out. She doesn't believe that we filled out these forms. She thinks we're trying to scam her. And the social rang her up on the phone and said, look, I'm just letting you know they have filled out the forms. And she was like, I don't believe.
I don't believe. Examine it.
Yeah. So it was kind of, you know, it just went absolutely pear-shaped. And so we had to get all our stuff out of. That was weird. We had to get all the stuff out of.
There weren't a lot of it left though, Gayle.
No.
All our stuff. You know, dog.
Clothes. Dog. We left the furniture there.
Have any furniture.
The stuff that we hadn't sold. And then and we had to move all our stuff up to that junkie's house a few doors up. That was weird, wasn't it?
Who helped herself to plenty of it.
I know, and the people, the landlady and landlord were waiting outside in the car. Do you remember?
That's it.
I managed to avoid them.
Now the thing is, so we get back to Dartford. We get the Subutex script moved up to Dartford because we were doing that down in Devon. Now we moved on to methadone because we both started using heroin again. And just this little story makes me laugh. People, and you know what I'm going to say, that's why you're laughing. People who don't know about this, methadone is a weird drug. It's very fucking strong. And what you do is you go to your key worker and you've got a drug habit and they'll put you on methadone. And then whenever you want more, you just go back to the doctor and go, this isn't holding me. I'm using heroin because it's not enough. And they just keep giving you more. They'll start you off on about 30 mil. I know people who are on like 120 mil a day. I'm thinking I want more methadone. So you come with me to the doctor's just for the day out. And we're sitting there, the pair of us smashed out of our heads. And I go to her, is that methadone ain't holding me. I need a bit more. And she says, well, how much heroin are you using on top of it? And of course, you say as much as possible because you want more. And I went, 4 or 5 bags a day, which was true. And she put me up to 80 mil, double, more than double. And then I remember out of the blue, because you were like a zombie, because, you know, you've got less body weight than me, even then. And out of the blue, with one eye up here, one eye down here, you hardly said anything for an hour. You suddenly went, yeah, I need more too. And I just sort of looked at her for what? And she went, okay, I'll give you 80 as well. And I was like, what the fuck? Next day, not even the next day, for the next 2 months, you were just asleep. I just remember me, my mum, and you sitting in my mum's house, and you just going. But what I want to ask you is, and it seems like an obvious question because I know why I done it, but why did you decide to have 80 ml meth a day? Just because I did?
Yeah, just because you did, and I thought I just want some more. I thought easy for you. I just saw it happen in front of my eyes. I was like, he's just asked and he's got it. And I just kind of blurted it out. And she went, okay, yeah, that's fine.
I'll give it a go.
She did. But that was meant. That stuff is flipping. I can't believe they give that to heroin.
No, I know. And for people who don't know, coming off of heroin is fucking hideous. Coming off of methadone is worse. And that's the weird thing. I mean, I know I've been in rehab with people coming off of methadone, and they're getting about an hour's sleep every 3 weeks. And it goes on.
That pain is just awful. Worse than any heroin withdrawal that I.
Because you've done it, I haven't. I would, if I went into a rehab and I was on methadone, I'd always get back on the smack so I could do a smack detox rather than a meth one. But you done it, didn't you? Because you had to get off it to get onto Subutex.
Yeah, so I was on a lot of methadone.
I know you were.
and they were like, right, we'll put you on into Subutex, and I just had to do that, you know, that had to transfer onto Subutex, and it was awful. I remember the pain of the methadone withdrawal was, Christ, you know, like I said, that pain in your bones, it was awful. It was worse.
Because what Subutex does, the drug is actually buprenorphine. It's a partial agonist. It will remove any residual opiates you've got, whether that be morphine, heroin, methadone. But methadone really builds up, really clings to the dopamine receptors. So when they say to you, oh, just do 3 days off the meth, you'll be fine. And I remember as soon as you had that Subutex, that buprenorphine, it put you into the most hideous detox.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But listen, we'll wrap this up now. But what I want to say is, from there was loads more dramas. You ended up in a hostel. You were given medication. You had a nervous breakdown. Your tongue swelled up so you could barely breathe. All this mad. And then, like,
stiff man syndrome. Your body goes stiff. I had what's called stiff man's syndrome.
Yeah, I had that.
And it means you have a kind of allergic reaction to a drug, and your whole body goes stiff. That's what it is. But
no, you fucking had it hard.
And I had that.
And then there was all that. And and you had a couple of those breakdowns, and then there's all this, and like I had the luxury, I say that loosely, of being in rehabs and that, but like I say, you never done it. But when I went to Focus, when I got clean properly for the first time when I was 36, we kind of split up then, and it was acrimony. It was an hassle. We knew we'd come to the end of that line, and it's lovely that we've still got a very strong friendship, and it means a lot to me, and I hope you know that. But what's been amazing is now, after what all you went through, I mean, we were both lucky not to get locked up for years. You know, we were sitting on kilos of crack. We were dealing crack. We were heroin addicts.
Well, think of the amount of people you knew that died.
Oh, I worked it out the other day. I can remember over 50 people who died of drug use during the period we were together. And so there's that, and you know, when you're smoking £1,000 worth of crack a day, that's heart attack. You know, people have in NA around here, people have heart attacks every week from smoking a few pipes. They die. Yeah. You know, I think luckily we had youth on our side, and also we hadn't got into the spikes, because if we were on the spikes then, we'd have been injecting that cocaine.
Start with that, we got into that. Yeah, but you think if we'd done that with the amount of crack that we were smoking.
Yeah, without a doubt. But what I wanted to say, though, so that was when I was 36. So that was like 9 years ago. And look at you now. You've got a lovely boyfriend. You've just got yourself a house.
Yeah.
You've got, you know, you're doing courses left, right, and centre. You look amazing. Oh, you know, I won't give your age away, but people won't believe it. You look incredible. I've never known you happier.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you and so proud of what you've done and that you got through all of that. I really am. And so what's it like for you? Because this is, you know, I've got a YouTube channel. I've done stand-up comedy for 10 years.
Yeah.
I've made, hang on. Whoa. Yeah, I've made it very public. And yet I think a lot of people talking to you, I can imagine you go to parties and that, and someone racks up a couple of lines of coke and they're probably going to you, oh no, this is some of the nicest coke. And you're sitting looking at them going, yeah, if only you knew. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I don't, you know, I do talk about it with people. You know, people do know my history and my story, but it's not as public as you, because obviously you're a comedian, you do all these YouTube, you know, videos. So I am quite open with it. But what's funny is, obviously, while I was going through it, when you're in it, you don't realise how grim it is, obviously, because it's, you know, it's totally subjective. There's no, you know, you can't see it from any other viewpoint because you're in it. And it was only when I listened to the video, when I watched the Crack Diaries.
Okay, because I want to get onto that. I want to get onto that in a moment.
Sorry, yeah.
I am interrupting you, but it's going to bring you back to that. When I recorded that, I go into kind of performance mode. I mean, it's a true story. There's little bits of improvising, but I'm concentrating on content rather than emotions. But I couldn't sleep after recording that. And I thought I was fine. I thought I felt fine. I recorded it. I was very happy with it. Got in bed, but
and
there was something on me.
It was funny because you said
so what I want to ask you is, when you watched the Crack Diaries, what was that like for you?
So it was exactly the same. You phoned me, said I've recorded time in Devon, and I feel really emotional, and I feel like I'm buzzing. I can't sleep, and I was like, oh, and I was thinking, should I watch it? Yeah, I'll watch it. And then
whoa! Because you put it off for a while, though, didn't you?
Yeah,
you didn't watch it that night.
My mum watched it. My mum told me, when I just watched.
Hi, Mum. I'll tell you what, my mum hasn't.
Well, she was like, I mean, she knew what happened, obviously, because we told her, and you know, but she said that's grim. I was like, yeah, I know, and I was like, I was really intrigued. I was thinking, what? I want to watch. So eventually, I did watch it. You know, I had the same, I'm sure, reaction that most other people. It's a mixture of intrigue and, you know, it's funny, but it's grim, all these kind of things. And but afterwards it was exactly the same. I felt really emotional. I can't explain it. Really emotional. I couldn't sleep that night afterwards either. I kept thinking about it all because when I was hearing it in the same way that probably your subscribers hear it, and people that are watching a video.
My people, please.
Your people, your crew, whatever you want. But it was that kind of reality of what happens, and it's grim and it's dark. Obviously, you and me talk about it, and we have lots of laughs because, you know, there were some funny things, and it was our life during that period. So it's we normalise it. It's very normalised. Very normal for us to talk and chat and laugh about
and
it.
And also having got through it to an extent relatively unscathed. You know, a lot of people die, get locked up or whatever. I mean, we've both built lives after that, so there's an element where we can laugh at it.
In that kind of game, to be, you know, that involved in it, in drugs, in all, you know, on every level as well. You know, taking it and the amount that we were doing and all the crap that goes with it and the lifestyle. But to get through that and to lead, like you say, relatively normal lives now, you know, it seems like a different lifetime almost. So when you talk about it in the Crack Diaries, I'm hearing it in the same way that anybody is that listens to it. But actually, that was about my life. And it's really poignant and it's really grim and funny as well in places, but it's incredibly emotional.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's strange that I can't remember exactly what you just said, but one of the reasons you aren't aware, this is kind of obvious, but one of the reasons you're not aware of how dangerous and how dark and how just life going downhill it is because you're on very strong drugs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You haven't got time to think about 10 minutes ago or 10 minutes into the future. You're stuck right in a grotty present. You know, and I've said this to people when I've done like talks in NA or whatever. You know, most humans who are together, who aren't damaged or who have dealt with problems, they'd put up with that kind of lifestyle for about an afternoon before they were like, I need to make some changes. And we put up with that for nearly a decade. 10 years.
Yeah, I know. Unbelievable.
All right, well, listen, it's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah, and I was a bit, I was a little bit nervous about this, but I'm glad I've done it, and it's been quite
I'm sure that the people who enjoyed the Crack Diaries will get something out of this, and I know what YouTube's like. They will let us know in the comments. I will have to edit this together. I'll try and do it tonight. Thank you very much for allowing me to let me speak, woman. Thank you for allowing me to. Thank you for allowing me to publish the Crack Diaries in the first place, because I wouldn't if you had a problem with that. And thank you for coming on and talking openly. And congratulations on what you've done with your life. And you've pulled it out of the gutter. Very few do. I'm very proud of you. I think you're a very special person. And best of luck. And we're going to go out for dinner in a couple of weeks, aren't we?
Yeah, we should do. And can I say to you as well, wicked, well done with what you've done with your life. You've certainly pulled it out of the bag, and look what you're doing now. You're amazing. So I'm glad and I'm honoured that we're friends and we'll always stay friends. So.
Very kind of you. I will talk to you soon, and we'll when I stop the broadcast, hang on, because we'll have a little chat. But I hope the people who've watched this have enjoyed it. If you've got any questions for me or Gayle, put them in the comments and I can get those questions to her and get them answered. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of it, and take care. Bye. Say goodbye, Gayle.
Bye.
Bye.